Black child told to switch seats. Flight crew freezes when they hear her last name. The moment 7-year-old Zora Williams stepped onto American Airlines Flight 2187 from Atlanta to New York, every eye turned to observe the little girl in the sunshine yellow dress, who walked with surprising confidence for her age. She clutched her stuffed elephant, Ellie, with one hand and her mother's fingers with the other, unaware that in the next 3 hours, her family name would send ripples of shock through the entire aircraft, uncovering decades of secrets and changing the trajectory of multiple lives forever. Maya Williams guided her daughter down the narrow aisle, conscious of the sideways glances from other passengers. After 15 years as a black woman in corporate America, she developed a sixth sense for distinguishing between casual curiosity and something more insidious. Today, her radar detected both. The yellow dress had been Zora's choice, a birthday gift from her grandmother that made her feel like sunshine walking. Maya had learned early to let her daughter embrace joy wherever she found it, even as she quietly prepared her for a world that wouldn't always celebrate her brightness. Row 14, seats A and B, Maya murmured, checking their boarding passes again. Window and middle, just like you wanted, baby. Zora bounced on her toes, her beaded braids clicking softly. Can I have the window seat, Mommy? Please, I want to watch the clouds make shapes. Of course, sunshine, Maya replied, helping Zora into the seat and stowing their carry-on in the overhead compartment. They settled in as the plane continued to board. Maya pulled out her tablet, checking last-minute work emails while Zora arranged Ellie on her lap, whispering secrets to the worn toy. The flight to New York was important, Maya's first major client presentation since her promotion to Senior Marketing Director at Horizon Media. But it was equally significant for Zora, who would finally meet her great-grandfather, Jeremiah Williams, now 93 and increasingly frail. Excuse me, a voice interrupted Maya's thoughts. She looked up to see a flight attendant with artificially bright blonde hair and a tight smile. Her name tag read Heather. I'm sorry, but we need to make a seating adjustment. Maya felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Is there a problem with our seats? Not exactly, Heather replied, lowering her voice. We have a family that needs to sit together, and we're hoping you and your daughter might be willing to move to row 27. Maya glanced back. Row 27 was near the restrooms, directly in front of a young couple with twin toddlers already kicking the seats. More importantly, it would separate them. I specifically booked these seats so my daughter and I could sit together. The other family would like to sit together as well, Heather said, her smile never wavering even as her eyes hardened slightly. It would be 2 adults and their son. They're in first class, but there's a medical reason they need to be closer to the lavatories. Maya noticed a white family of 3 hovering expectantly in the aisle. A tall, distinguished-looking man in his 40s, a stylishly dressed blonde woman, and a boy about Zora's age wearing a private school uniform and a bored expression. If they're in first class, why can't they be moved to first-class seats near the front lavatory? Maya asked logically. Heather's smile tightened. Those seats are all occupied by our premium customers. The implication hung in the air, that Maya and Zora were somehow less valuable passengers. Maya felt Zora tense beside her, small fingers curling more tightly around Ellie's worn trunk. At 7, her daughter already recognized these moments for what they were. I'm sorry, but we paid for these specific seats, Maya said firmly. My daughter and I need to stay together, and I have work to prepare for before we land. The distinguished man stepped forward. Perhaps I can help. His voice carried the polished authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. I'm Dr. Richard Whitley. My son has a medical condition that requires quick access to the lavatory. We'd consider it a personal favor. Maya met his gaze levelly. I sympathize with your situation, Dr. Whitley, but surely there are other passengers who could be asked to move, perhaps someone traveling alone. We've already asked several others, Heather interjected, though Maya had observed no such attempts. Zora tugged at Maya's sleeve. Mommy, she whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear, is this like what happened at the restaurant when they tried to put us by the kitchen even though we had a reservation? A flicker of discomfort crossed Dr. Whitley's face. His wife laid a manicured hand on his arm. Richard, let's not make a scene. We can find another solution. But another flight attendant had joined Heather now, an older woman with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Her name tag read Patricia. She had the weathered face of someone who'd been enforcing airline policies since deregulation. "Is there a problem here?" Patricia asked, her tone suggesting that whatever the problem was, it would soon be resolved according to her preference. "These passengers are declining to switch seats to accommodate a family with medical needs," Heather explained, the narrative already neatly packaged. Patricia's gaze swept over Maya and Zora, lingering momentarily on the child's bright yellow dress before focusing on Maya. "Ma'am, we need you to cooperate with crew member instructions. It's a safety issue." "With all due respect," Maya replied, her marketing executive voice in full effect. "Being asked to move seats as a courtesy is not a safety instruction. My daughter and I are staying together in the seats we paid for." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Maya Williams." "And the child?" Maya felt Zora press against her side. "My daughter is Zora Williams." Something flickered across Patricia's face, a momentary confusion followed by a closer scrutiny of both Maya and Zora. "Williams? Any relation to Jeremiah Williams?" The question caught Maya off guard. "He's my grandfather, Zora's great-grandfather. Why?" The change that came over Patricia was instantaneous and bewildering. Her stern demeanor vanished, replaced by something akin to shock, then what appeared to be genuine emotion. "Jeremiah Williams of the Tuskegee Airmen, the 332nd Fighter Group." Patricia's voice had lost its authoritative edge. Maya nodded slowly, increasingly confused. "Yes, that's him. We're flying to New York to visit him." Patricia turned to Heather, then to the Whitleys, who stood watching this exchange with growing impatience. "These passengers will be keeping their assigned seats," she said firmly. Then to the Whitleys, "Please follow me. We'll find another arrangement." "Now wait just a minute," Dr. Whitley began, but Patricia silenced him with a look that had probably quelled unruly passengers for decades. "Sir Jeremiah Williams saved my father's life over Dresden in 1945. When I say these passengers are keeping their seats, they're keeping their seats." As Patricia ushered the bewildered Whitleys away, Heather lingered, her expression unreadable. "I apologize for the confusion, Ms. Williams," she said, though the words seemed mechanical. "Can I get you or your daughter anything before takeoff?" After she'd gone, Zora looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mommy, why did she change her mind when she heard great-grandpa's name?" Maya stroked her daughter's braids, considering how to explain the complex intersection of history, race, and unexpected connections that had just played out. "Well, sunshine, sometimes our names carry stories that are bigger than we know." As the plane began to taxi, Maya couldn't help but wonder what other stories her grandfather had never told, and what else awaited them in New York beyond the family reunion they'd planned. The seatbelt sign chimed off at cruising altitude, and the cabin hummed with movement as passengers stretched and settled in for the 2-hour flight. Maya noticed Patricia making her way deliberately toward their row, carrying what appeared to be 2 hot chocolates with miniature marshmallows floating on top. "Compliments of the flight crew," Patricia said, placing the drinks carefully on their tray tables. Then, lowering her voice, "Ms. Williams, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak with you briefly when you have a moment." Maya nodded, curiosity overriding her lingering wariness. "Zora, honey, enjoy your cocoa while I talk to Ms. Patricia for a minute." In the small galley area, Patricia's professional composure slipped, revealing a vulnerability that transformed her entirely. "I've been flying for 37 years, she began, "and I never thought I'd meet the family of Jeremiah Williams. My father, Lieutenant Jack Harrington, was a bomber pilot. February 1945, his B-17 was hit badly over Dresden. Your grandfather and his wingman escorted them back to friendly territory when they could have returned to base." Maya absorbed this information, connecting it with fragments of stories she'd heard growing up. Her grandfather rarely spoke about his wartime experiences, deflecting questions with gentle humor or changing the subject entirely. "Did your father keep in touch with my grandfather after the war?" Maya asked. Patricia's expression clouded. "He tried, but it was 1945 in America. The same men who were heroes in European skies came home to segregated water fountains. My father invited your grandfather to his wedding, The hotel wouldn't allow him inside. She paused. Dad never forgave himself for not finding another venue. He said it was the coward's choice. Maya felt the familiar weight of America's complicated history pressing down. She'd encountered enough subtle, and not so subtle, racism in her own life to understand how much worse it had been for her grandfather's generation. Yet here was this unexpected connection, a white woman in her 60s carrying her father's remorse across decades. I have some photos, Patricia continued, reaching into her pocket. I've carried copies on every flight since I started flying. Dad said your grandfather had a saying, the sky doesn't care what color you are when you're saving each other's lives. The photos showed young men in flight gear, standing before P-51 Mustangs with distinctive red tails. In one image, two pilots, one black, one white, stood with arms around each other's shoulders. Exhaustion and triumph mingled on their faces. Is this him? Maya asked, pointing to the black pilot. Patricia nodded, and that's my father beside him. Maya stared at her grandfather's young face, recognizing the same determined set of the jaw that she saw in Zora when her daughter faced challenges at school. Thank you for sharing this. Would you mind if I took a photo of these pictures? Zora is meeting her great-grandfather for the first time tomorrow. This would mean a lot to her. Of course, Patricia agreed. And please tell Captain Williams that Jack Harrington's daughter never forgot what he did. When Maya returned to her seat, Zora was chatting animatedly with the passenger across the aisle, an elderly black woman with elegant silver dreadlocks and kind eyes. Mommy, this is Dr. Aliner, Zora announced. She's a scientist who studies rocks from space, and she knows great-grandpa too. Dr. Aliner Diggs smiled warmly. I was just telling your daughter that I had the honor of interviewing Captain Williams for my dissertation on segregated military units. I recognized your names when that flight attendant was making inquiries. Small world, isn't it? The coincidence seemed almost too perfect, but Maya had learned that her grandfather's reach extended through unexpected channels. It's lovely to meet you, Dr. Diggs. Were you able to publish your dissertation? Indeed, I was. It became my first book, Red Tails, Black Wings, The Untold Story of the Tuskegee Airmen. Your grandfather's insights were invaluable. She reached into her carry-on and produced a well-worn paperback. I always carry a few copies when I travel. Would you accept one for your daughter? Captain Williams is quoted extensively in Chapter 4. As the flight progressed, Maya observed a subtle shift in how the crew interacted with them. Heather, who had been so dismissive earlier, now made frequent stops to check if they needed anything. The pilot himself came back briefly during a smooth stretch, introducing himself and mentioning that his grandfather had also been a bomber pilot in Europe. He asked Maya to convey his deepest respects to Captain Williams. By the time they began their descent into LaGuardia, 3 different passengers had approached to share connections to the Tuskegee Airmen. Through it all, Zora absorbed everything with the remarkable perception of children, asking questions that revealed her growing understanding of why her great-grandfather's name carried such weight. Mommy, she whispered as the landing gear deployed with a mechanical groan, I think great-grandpa must be like a real-life superhero. Maya squeezed her daughter's hand. In many ways, he is sunshine, but even superheroes don't always get treated like heroes. That's something important to remember. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, and as passengers prepared to disembark, Patricia appeared again, this time with the captain. Ms. Williams, we'd like to invite you and Zora to exit first, the captain said. It's a small courtesy, but one we'd like to extend in honor of Captain Williams' service. As they walked through the first-class cabin toward the exit, Maya noticed Dr. Whitley and his family. The doctor avoided her gaze, but his wife offered a small, embarrassed smile. Their son stared openly at Zora's yellow dress, then at Zora herself, with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. On the jetway, Zora turned to Maya. I can't wait to tell great-grandpa about everything that happened. Maya nodded, though she wondered how her grandfather would receive this attention. In her experience, he deflected praise and rarely spoke of recognition. His humility was as much a part of him as his courage had been in those dangerous skies over Europe. Before we do, Sunshine, remember that great-grandpa might not want to talk much about being a war hero. Sometimes people who do brave things don't like to remember scary times, or they feel sad about friends they lost. Zora considered this solemnly. Like how Ms. Jeffers at school doesn't like to talk about her brother who didn't come back from Afghanistan. Maya was continually amazed by her daughter's emotional intelligence. Exactly like that. We'll let great-grandpa decide how much he wants to share, okay? Their car service was waiting as arranged, the driver holding a sign reading, Williams family. The 40-minute drive from LaGuardia to her grandfather's brownstone in Harlem passed quickly as Zora peppered the driver with questions about New York landmarks. The neighborhood had changed since Maya's last visit 3 years ago, new boutiques and coffee shops signaling the relentless march of gentrification. Yet her grandfather's home remained a dignified constant, its stone steps swept clean, brass fixtures polished to a warm glow. Maya felt the usual conflicting emotions as they approached: pride in this family anchor, anxiety about what each visit might reveal about her grandfather's declining health, and guilt over the infrequency of their visits. They were expected, so she wasn't surprised when the door opened before they reached it. What did surprise her was that it wasn't her grandfather or the home health aide who greeted them, but a tall, striking woman about Maya's age, with locks cascading down her back and familiar Williams eyes. "Olivia," Maya gasped, momentarily frozen on the steps. "Hello, cousin," Olivia replied, her voice carrying the musical lilt of her Jamaican upbringing. "It's been a long time." Behind her, a deep, weathered voice called out, "Are they here, Liv? Bring them in, bring them in." Olivia stepped aside, her expression inscrutable. Maya hesitated only briefly before entering, guiding Zora ahead of her into the familiar foyer with its dark wood paneling and framed historical photographs. In the sunlit living room, Jeremiah Williams sat in his favorite leather armchair, dignity intact despite the oxygen tube in his nostrils and the lap blanket covering withered legs. At 93, his once imposing frame had diminished, but his eyes remained sharp as ever beneath his crown of white hair. "There's my girls," he announced, arms outstretched. "Come here and let me look at you both." Zora approached with uncharacteristic shyness, suddenly overwhelmed by meeting the man whose legacy had created such a stir just hours earlier. "Hello, great-grandpa," she said softly. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more content like this to life. Jeremiah's face creased into a smile that erased decades from his appearance. "Miss Zora Williams," he said, taking her small hands in his gnarled ones. "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you. That's quite a beautiful yellow dress you're wearing." "It's my favorite color," Zora replied, confidence returning. "Mommy says it's because I'm like sunshine." "Your mommy is exactly right." He looked up at Maya, eyes glistening. "You've done good, child, real good." The formality between them dissolved as Maya crossed the room and embraced her grandfather, inhaling the familiar scent of Old Spice aftershave and the peppermints he always kept in his pocket. "I've missed you, Grandpa." "Missed you too, little one," he replied, using his childhood nickname for her. Then, with a nod toward Olivia, who stood watching from the doorway, "Your cousin's been keeping me company these past few months. Moved all the way from London to help this old man keep his independence." Maya turned toward Olivia, questions swirling. They'd been close as children, spending summers together in this very house while their parents worked. But adult lives and an unresolved conflict had created a 15-year silence between them. "I didn't know you were in New York." "Grandfather needed help," Olivia said simply. "It seemed like the right time for a change." The unspoken history hung between them, the bitter argument over the family property in Jamaica, the accusations of favoritism, the wedding Maya hadn't attended. But Jeremiah, perceptive as ever, cut through the tension. "You two can sort out your grown-up nonsense later," he declared. "Right now, I want to hear everything about my great-granddaughter. Zora, come sit by me and tell me about school and your friends and whatever else 7-year-olds find important these days." As Zora settled beside her great-grandfather, launching enthusiastically into stories about her second-grade classroom and her best friend Aisha, Maya retreated to the kitchen with Olivia to help prepare lunch. The familiar routine of working side by side in the kitchen gradually eased some of the awkwardness between them. "He's been asking about you," Olivia said quietly, slicing tomatoes for sandwiches. especially after his hospitalization last month. Maya nearly dropped the pitcher of iced tea she was preparing. Hospitalization? I didn't know. Pneumonia? It was touch and go for a few days. Olivia's tone wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. He wouldn't let me call you, said you had enough on your plate with your promotion and single parenting. The gentle rebuke stung all the more for its accuracy. Maya had been drowning in work, using career advancement as both shield and excuse to avoid complicated family dynamics. I should have been here. Yes, Olivia agreed, then softened. But you're here now, and you've brought Zora, which means more to him than anything else could. In the living room, they could hear Zora's animated voice recounting the incident on the airplane. Maya tensed, moving toward the doorway to intervene, but Olivia laid a restraining hand on her arm. Let her tell it, Olivia murmured. He needs to hear what his legacy means to others. They listened as Zora described Patricia's reaction to Jeremiah's name with the detailed observation only children possess. And then, great-grandpa, the mean lady became nice right away when she heard you were a Tuskegee airman. She said you saved her daddy's life. Did you really fly an airplane in a war? Jeremiah's response was quiet, nearly inaudible from the kitchen. But when Maya and Olivia brought lunch into the living room, they found him showing Zora the Purple Heart medal he kept in a drawer beside his chair. Your great-grandfather, he was saying, speaking of himself in the third person as he often did when discussing his military service, was just doing his duty like any other American. The color of a man's skin doesn't determine his courage or his commitment. But the airplane people treated us different until they knew your name, Zora persisted with a child's unvarnished honesty. Is that why Mommy gets sad sometimes when people look at us funny in stores? Jeremiah's eyes met Maya's over Zora's head, a lifetime of shared understanding passing between them. Come sit, he said, patting the sofa beside his chair. All three of you Williams women, it's time for some family history. Over turkey sandwiches and iced tea, Jeremiah Williams did something Maya had never witnessed before. He spoke openly about his experiences as a black pilot in a segregated military, about returning home to a country that didn't recognize his heroism, about the indignities and injustices he'd faced while wearing the same uniform as white soldiers who were welcomed as heroes. We were fighting two wars, he explained to Zora, one against the Nazis overseas and another against prejudice at home, and the sad truth, little sunshine, is that the second war isn't fully won yet. Is that why those people wanted to move us on the plane? Zora asked. Because of the Second War. Jeremiah nodded slowly. Some battles in that war are big and loud, like when your mommy and I marched in Washington back in the 80s, but most are small and quiet, happening in everyday places like airplanes and restaurants and schools. The important thing is to fight those battles with dignity. Like you did when you kept flying planes even though people said you couldn't, Zora asked. Exactly like that, Jeremiah's eyes twinkled. And like your mommy does every day in her big corporate job, and like your cousin Olivia does with her photography that shows the truth of people's lives. Maya glanced at Olivia in surprise. You're still photographing? I thought you went into finance after university. I did both, Olivia replied. Banking paid the bills, photography kept me sane. She paused. Actually, I have a gallery opening next week, my first solo exhibition in New York. That's wonderful, Maya said sincerely. What's the focus of your work? Legacy, Olivia answered, with a meaningful glance toward their grandfather. Specifically, the descendants of the Tuskegee Airmen and how their lives were shaped by that inheritance of courage and dignity. The conversation had taken an unexpected turn, revealing dimensions of Olivia's life that Maya had missed during their years of estrangement. She felt a familiar pang of regret for the wasted time between them. I'd love to see it, Maya offered. Maybe we could extend our stay a few days. Jeremiah beamed at this suggestion, but before he could respond, a coughing fit seized him, harsh enough to rattle his frail frame. Olivia moved quickly, adjusting his oxygen and offering water while Maya ushered a worried-looking Zora into the kitchen on the pretext of preparing dessert. Is great-grandpa going to be okay? Zora whispered, her earlier excitement dimmed by concern. Maya measured her words carefully. Great-grandpa is very old, Sunshine. His body gets tired easily, but right now he's okay and he's so happy we're here." When they returned with bowls of vanilla ice cream, Jeremiah's favorite since childhood, the old man had recovered his composure, though the episode had clearly drained him. Nevertheless, he insisted on continuing the family gathering, turning the conversation to lighter topics. "Now, Zora," he said, as Olivia helped him with his dessert, "your mommy tells me you're quite the artist. Did you bring any of your drawings to show your old great-grandfather?" The afternoon passed in gentle reminiscence and new connections, with Zora proudly displaying her artwork and absorbing family stories with rapt attention. As evening approached, Jeremiah reluctantly acknowledged his need to rest, but extracted promises from Maya and Zora to return first thing in the morning. "And Maya," he added as Olivia helped him toward his bedroom, "there's something important in my study I need to discuss with you tomorrow. Legal papers and such. Nothing that won't keep until morning." That night, settled in the guest room they'd be sharing, Zora curled against Maya's side as they read together before bed. "Mommy," she said during a pause between chapters, "I wish we could stay with great-grandpa forever." Maya stroked her daughter's hair, weighing her response. "What about school and your friends? And Ellie would miss her elephant bedroom." "We could bring Ellie here," Zora reasoned with a child's simple logic. "And I could make new friends. Great-grandpa needs us more than my school does." The innocent observation landed heavily on Maya's heart. She'd made her life in Atlanta deliberately, building career and community there while maintaining just enough connection to her New York roots to satisfy familial obligation. But seeing her grandfather today, frailer than she'd anticipated, yet still the moral center of their family, had unsettled her carefully constructed boundaries. "Let's enjoy our visit first," Maya suggested gently. "Big decisions need lots of thinking time." The next morning, Maya woke early, leaving Zora sleeping peacefully surrounded by stuffed animals they'd brought from home. She found Olivia in the kitchen, already dressed for the day and preparing coffee. "He had a good night," Olivia reported before Maya could ask. "The home health aide stayed over. She's helping him get ready now." Maya accepted the offered coffee. "Thank you for being here with him. I should have visited more often." Olivia shrugged. "We make choices. I made plenty of my own that I regret." She hesitated, then added, "He kept every article about your promotions, you know, has a scrapbook in his study. 'My Maya breaking those glass ceilings,' he always says." This revelation threatened to unravel Maya's composure. She'd always assumed her grandfather viewed her corporate career as somewhat frivolous compared to his generation's struggles. "I didn't know." "There's a lot we don't know about each other anymore," Olivia observed. 15 years is a long time." Before Maya could respond, Jeremiah's voice called from the study. "Is that coffee I smell? Bring some in here, Liv, and tell Maya I'm ready to talk business if she's awake." In the wood-paneled study that had always been her grandfather's sanctuary, Maya found him dressed impeccably in pressed slacks and a cardigan, seated at the antique desk that had belonged to his own father. Though the oxygen canister stood nearby, he'd removed the tube for now, determined to present strength. "Sit down, little one," he said, gesturing to the leather chair opposite his. "We have things to discuss before Zora wakes up." The seriousness of his tone alarmed her. "Grandpa, is everything all right? Are you?" He waved away her concern. "I'm old, not dying, at least not any faster than yesterday, but I need to put my affairs in order, and your visit presents the perfect opportunity." He slid a folder across the desk. "These are the papers for this house. I'm putting it in a trust for Zora's education with you as trustee." Maya stared at the documents, stunned. The Harlem brownstone was not only a significant financial asset in New York's ruthless real estate market, but also the Williams family anchor for 3 generations. "Grandpa, I can't accept this. What about Olivia and your other grandchildren?" "Olivia gets the property in Jamaica. It's already arranged. As for your cousins, they've each received their share of my savings." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "This isn't about money, Maya. It's about legacy. This house has history in its walls, not just our families, but our people's. Langston Hughes sat in that very chair you're sitting in discussing poetry with my father. Thurgood Marshall planned legal strategies at our dining table. When I'm gone, someone needs to be guardian of those stories." Maya felt the weight of his words, and the responsibility they represented settling on her shoulders. But we live in Atlanta. I have my career, Zora has school. Careers change, schools exist everywhere. His tone was matter of fact. I'm not asking you to decide this minute, but the papers are ready when you are. He paused, studying her face. There's something else I want to show you. From the desk drawer, he withdrew an aged leather portfolio. Inside were letters, dozens of them, yellowed with time but carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. After that incident on your flight yesterday, I thought it might be time to share these, Jeremiah explained. These are letters from the families of bomber crews we escorted. White boys from farms and cities across America who came home because we didn't abandon them, even when our own country had abandoned us in many ways. Maya gently turned the pages, reading snippets of heartfelt gratitude. Mothers thanking him for their sons' lives. Children who had fathers because of his squadron's protection. Veterans who remembered the distinctive red tails of the P-51s as salvation appearing out of the smoke and chaos. You never showed these to anyone? She asked, deeply moved. Your grandmother knew about them, but this wasn't the kind of thing a black man showcased in the 1950s. Drawing attention to yourself was dangerous, even for a war hero. He closed the portfolio. But now, with all this talk of erasing our history of pretending America was always fair and just, these letters tell a different story, one that Zora and her generation should know. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Zora herself, sleep-crumpled but excited for another day with her great-grandfather. The serious discussion gave way to breakfast preparations and planning the day's activities, but Maya couldn't shake the weight of the decisions before her. Later that morning, while Olivia took Zora to the corner bakery to select pastries for lunch, Maya found herself alone with her grandfather again. He was resting in his favorite chair, seemingly lost in thought until he noticed her watching him. "You're troubled by what I've proposed?" he stated rather than asked. Maya sat beside him. "It's a lot to consider. Moving across the country, changing Zora's school, leaving my position at Horizon. These aren't small adjustments." "No, they aren't," he agreed. "And I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't believe it was important, not just for me, but for you and Zora." "What do you mean?" Jeremiah adjusted himself in his chair, wincing slightly as he found a more comfortable position. "Maya, you've achieved remarkable things in a world that didn't make it easy. I couldn't be prouder. But I've watched you construct your life like a fortress, advancing professionally while keeping emotional entanglements at arm's length." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Since her divorce from Zora's father 5 years earlier, Maya had focused singularly on career advancement and motherhood, allowing little space for other connections. "I'm providing security for Zora," she defended, "building a future where she'll have opportunities I didn't." "And that's admirable," Jeremiah acknowledged. "But security isn't just financial. It's knowing your roots, understanding the shoulders you stand on. That yellow dress Zora loves so much? It's the exact shade your grandmother wore on our wedding day. Zora never met Virginia, but something of her spirit lives in that child." Maya hadn't known this, hadn't recognized the connection between her daughter's favorite dress and the grandmother she resembled so strongly. It was a small detail, but one that underscored how much family history she hadn't passed down. "I'm not saying you must move here," Jeremiah continued. "I'm saying consider what Zora needs beyond material success. Consider what you might need too." Before Maya could respond, the front door opened, heralding Zora and Olivia's return. The conversation shifted, but his words lingered, prompting Maya to observe more carefully throughout the day. How Zora blossomed in the brownstones' historical embrace. How Olivia and her grandfather shared shorthand references to neighbors and local characters. How the house itself seemed to hold them all in a continuity that transcended its physical structure. That evening, after Zora had been tucked into bed with stories of her grandmother Virginia's childhood adventures, Maya and Olivia sat on the brownstones' small back patio, sharing a bottle of wine in the garden their grandfather had maintained for decades. "He's making a compelling case for you to relocate," Olivia observed, refilling their glasses. "Subtle as a sledgehammer, our grandfather." Maya smiled ruefully. "Some things never change." She paused, then added, "I'm sorry about how things ended between us, Liv. The property dispute, the things I said at Uncle Marcus's funeral. I was wrong." Olivia studied her wine thoughtfully. We both said things we regret. Family has a way of finding our sore spots. She looked up. But I've missed you, Maya. Zora too, though I've only known her through grandfather's stories until now. She's incredible, Maya said, maternal pride evident. Smarter than I was at her age, more confident too. When that flight attendant tried to move us, Zora saw exactly what was happening. She's 7, but she already recognizes when she's being treated differently because of her race. It's a heavy inheritance, Olivia acknowledged. But she also inherits strength from this family, from you, from grandfather, from all those who came before. The conversation turned to Olivia's photography exhibit, and Maya was struck by how her cousin's work explored many of the themes she herself grappled with: identity, legacy, belonging. By the time they finished the wine, tentative plans had formed for Maya to bring Zora to the gallery opening the following week, extending their New York stay. Days passed in a gentle rhythm as Maya, Zora, and Olivia fell into a pattern of shared meals, outings to Jeremiah's favorite Harlem landmarks, and evening storytelling sessions where the family's history unfolded for Zora's eager ears. Maya observed her daughter absorbing these narratives hungrily, connecting pieces of herself to the larger Williams tapestry. On their 5th day in New York, Maya received an unexpected call from her boss at Horizon Media. The major client presentation she'd prepared for had gone exceptionally well in her absence, but now the client wanted to expand the campaign nationally and needed Maya's input immediately. "They're asking if you can cut your family visit short," her boss explained. "The executive team is meeting tomorrow in Atlanta. I told them you're dealing with a family situation, but..." The unspoken message was clear. This opportunity could fast-track Maya's ascension to the executive level she'd been pursuing relentlessly. 6 months earlier, she wouldn't have hesitated. Now, watching through the window as Zora helped her great-grandfather tend to his prized rose bushes, Maya found herself weighing values on a scale that had subtly shifted. "I can join virtually for critical discussions," she offered, "but I need to remain in New York through next week." Her boss's surprise was evident even through the phone. "Maya Williams turning down FaceTime with the executive committee. Are you feeling all right?" "Actually," Maya replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice, "I'm feeling clearer than I have in a long time." After ending the call, Maya joined Jeremiah and Zora in the garden. Her grandfather looked up from where he was demonstrating proper pruning technique, his weathered face breaking into a knowing smile. "Important work call?" he asked. "Nothing that can't wait," Maya assured him, accepting the gardening gloves Zora eagerly handed her. "Some things matter more." The week progressed, bringing them to the night of Olivia's gallery opening. The exhibition space in Chelsea was crowded with art world figures and community members, all gathered to view Olivia's powerful photographs documenting the descendants of Tuskegee Airmen across America. Maya was staggered by the breadth of her cousin's work: teachers, activists, artists, scientists, ordinary people carrying extraordinary legacies. In the gallery's center, commanding attention, hung an enlarged photograph of Jeremiah Williams in his flight jacket, taken when he was in his 70s. His eyes gazed directly into the camera with the same unwavering dignity he still possessed. Surrounding this central image were smaller photographs of his children, grandchildren, and, to Maya's surprise, a beautifully composed portrait of Zora in her yellow dress, taken just days earlier without Maya's knowledge. "Grandfather asked if I could include her," Olivia explained, appearing beside Maya. "Said the exhibit wouldn't be complete without the newest branch of the legacy." Maya felt tears threatening. "It's perfect, Liv. All of it is remarkable." As they moved through the crowded gallery, Maya was struck by how many attendees approached to share connections to the Tuskegee Airmen, children and grandchildren of pilots, mechanics, and support personnel who had been part of that groundbreaking unit. It was as if an invisible network had always existed around them, waiting to be acknowledged. Near the evening's end, as attendance thinned, an elegant elderly woman using a walker made her way deliberately toward Maya and Zora. Her silver hair was styled impeccably, and despite her advanced age, she carried herself with unmistakable poise. "You must be Maya and Zora Williams," she said, her voice cultured but marked with emotion. "I'm Alina Whitley. My late husband served as a bomber pilot in Europe. Captain Williams and his wingman escorted his damaged plane back to safety in 1944. Maya recognized the name with a jolt. Whitley, are you related to a Dr. Richard Whitley by any chance? Eleanor's smile faded slightly. My grandson, I understand there was an unfortunate incident on your flight to New York. So news of the encounter had traveled through family channels. Maya felt Zora press against her side, suddenly shy in the face of this connection to their recent experience. Richard called me, quite upset about being denied his preferred seating, Eleanor continued. When he mentioned the name Williams and a flight attendant's reaction, I had a suspicion. She looked down at Zora with genuine warmth. My dear, that beautiful yellow dress reminds me of one I wore as a girl. May I tell you a story about your great-grandfather that you might not have heard? For the next 15 minutes, Eleanor Whitley shared a perspective on Jeremiah Williams that neither Maya nor Zora had encountered. How her husband had tried to maintain contact after the war, how segregation had complicated their friendship, how her husband had testified before a military committee about the exceptional skill and courage of the 332nd Fighter Group when others tried to diminish their contributions. Your great-grandfather didn't just save individual lives, Eleanor concluded. He and his fellow airmen helped save this country's soul, though we've been slow to acknowledge it. She pressed something into Zora's hand, a small, worn pilot's wing pin. My husband would want you to have this, to remember that history has many sides and it's our job to make sure all of them are told. As they prepared to leave the gallery, Maya found herself standing before Olivia's central photograph of Jeremiah, studying the face she'd known all her life with new appreciation. So much had been revealed in this visit: family connections, historical significance, and the quiet dignity with which her grandfather had carried both triumph and injustice. Her phone buzzed with another message from her Atlanta office, the third that evening. The executive team needed decisions. Clients were waiting. Opportunities were time-sensitive. Maya silenced the phone and took Zora's hand. Ready to go home, sunshine. Zora looked up questioningly. Back to Grandpa's house. Yes, Maya confirmed. Back to Grandpa's house, for tonight and maybe. She paused, the weight of decision settling into certainty. Maybe for much longer than that. 3 months later, Maya stood in what was now her home office in the brownstone's converted third-floor bedroom, unpacking the last of her professional books while on a conference call with her new New York-based team. After multiple conversations with her employer, she negotiated a transfer to Horizon's Manhattan office, accepting a lateral move rather than the Atlanta promotion she'd once coveted. The transition hadn't been simple. Zora had initially struggled with changing schools mid-year, missing her Atlanta friends and familiar routines. But she'd adapted with remarkable resilience, especially once she'd been enrolled in a Harlem arts magnet school where her creativity flourished. More importantly, she spent afternoons with her great-grandfather, absorbing stories and wisdom that no history book could provide. Olivia had moved into an apartment nearby, maintaining her close relationship with Jeremiah while giving Maya and Zora space to establish their own household rhythms. The cousins had renewed their once strong bond, with Olivia becoming the aunt figure Zora had never had. As for Jeremiah, Maya sometimes caught him watching them with quiet satisfaction, as if pieces of a long-envisioned puzzle had finally fallen into place. His health remained fragile, but his spirit seemed energized by the daily presence of his great-granddaughter, whose yellow dress now hung alongside historical family photographs in the living room, a bridge between past and future. When Maya ended her work call and descended to the kitchen, she found Jeremiah and Zora at the table, heads bent together over a large scrapbook. Its pages contained the letters he'd preserved for decades, now carefully organized and annotated with Zora's handwritten observations. We're making a proper archive, Zora explained proudly. Great-grandpa says it's important to preserve primary sources. Primary sources, Maya repeated, smiling at her grandfather. You're turning my daughter into a historian. Someone has to carry these stories forward, Jeremiah replied, his eyes twinkling. This little sunshine seems like the perfect choice. As Maya joined them at the table that had witnessed so much family history, she reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them here. A flight attendant's recognition, a family name's power, a legacy revealed through coincidence and courage. The yellow dress that had caught everyone's attention that day on the plane now symbolized something greater, the brightness that could emerge from even the darkest chapters of history when stories were preserved and shared with love. "What do you think, Mommy?" Zora asked, pointing to a particularly moving letter from a bomber pilot's widow. "Should we include this in the exhibition?" The exhibition was an ambitious project Zora had conceived with Olivia's guidance, a community display of Tuskegee Airmen memorabilia and family stories to be hosted at her new school. What had begun as a simple family history exploration had evolved into an educational initiative that would soon welcome visitors from across the city. "Absolutely," Maya agreed. "Every voice deserves to be heard." Jeremiah reached across the table to squeeze Maya's hand, his touch conveying what words didn't need to: gratitude, pride, and the quiet assurance that some choices, though difficult, ultimately lead precisely where we need to be. And in that moment, surrounded by the tangible evidence of her family's extraordinary journey, Maya Williams felt something she hadn't fully experienced in years: the seamless integration of past and present, of professional accomplishment and personal fulfillment, of individual ambition and collective legacy. The path forward might not always be clear, but with Zora's brightness leading the way and Jeremiah's wisdom guiding them, it would certainly be meaningful. For a child in a yellow dress had not only found her place in an ongoing story, but had become its most vibrant chapter, a testament to the power of names remembered, dignity preserved, and courage passed from one generation to the next.